The sun was warm on my skin, and the smell of grilled burgers filled the air. It was my parents' anniversary barbecue, and the whole family was there. I was laughing with a cousin when my brother, Mark, clinked his glass loudly. "Everyone, a toast," he announced, a familiar, smug grin on his face. He turned his gaze toward me. "I just want to say how proud I am of my little sister. I remember when she couldn't even balance a checkbook. She never would have survived adulthood without me." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. My smile froze. He wasn't done. He launched into a story about co-signing my first apartment lease, twisting it to make me sound helpless. "The truth is," he finished, his voice booming, "she'll never make it on her own." The applause felt like a physical blow. I mumbled an excuse and walked toward the house, my vision blurring. As I passed the patio doors, I heard him say to our cousin, "I carried her for years. She owes me." Alone in the kitchen, I leaned against the counter, my hands shaking. This wasn't new. My whole life, Mark had been the golden child, the successful one. I was always the one who needed help. He bought his first car, our parents co-signed mine. He started a business, I was told to get a stable job. Every achievement of mine was minimized, every stumble amplified. Later that night, after most guests had left, I found him on the back deck. "Why do you always do that?" I asked, my voice quiet. "Humiliate me?" He chuckled, not even looking at me. "It's the truth, isn't it? Without me, you'd be nothing." He walked away, leaving me standing in the cool night air. As his taillights disappeared down the street, I noticed a folder on the passenger seat of his unlocked car. A strange feeling pushed me to open the car door. The folder was plain, but my name was typed on a tab. My heart hammered. I took it inside to my old bedroom. Inside were documents I hadn't seen in over a decade. It was paperwork for Bright Future Innovations, a small graphic design LLC we started together when I was 22. It was my designs, his sales pitch. I thought we dissolved it after a few slow months. But these papers looked recent. There were bank statements, tax forms. My breath caught. One particular page, an operating agreement, stated the ownership structure clearly, 50-50s. Right there, beside his flamboyant signature, was my own neat, hopeful cursive from all those years ago. I spent the next morning buried in the documents. It wasn't illegal, just brilliantly manipulative. Mark had never stopped listing himself as a founding partner and co-owner of Bright Future Innovations on his LinkedIn and professional resumes. He'd used our failed little side project as a stepping stone, padding his credentials to make himself look like a serial entrepreneur. He'd built his entire corporate career on the back of a business that technically still belonged to both of us. He had taken my early work and claimed it as his sole legacy. The betrayal was a cold, heavy stone in my stomach. I needed to know for sure. I found the number for the state business registry and dialed, my palms sweating. The woman on the phone was all business. I gave her the LLC name. "Yes, it's active," she confirmed. "But the annual report is overdue. If both owners don't file and sign soon, the entity will be listed as non-compliant." My mind raced. What happens then? I asked. The business can't legally operate. It could also trigger reviews for any professional licenses or positions tied to its active status. My mouth went dry. Positions? What kind of positions? I asked, almost afraid of the answer. She clicked her tongue. "Well, it looks like your co-owner, Mr. Mark Evans, has a compliance-dependent role at his firm. It's in the filing notes." The room seemed to spin. I dove into research. Mark's prestigious job as a senior vice president at a major finance firm wasn't just a job, it was part of a special innovation leadership program. One of the key requirements for entry and continued employment was proof of sustained entrepreneurial leadership, demonstrated by owning an active, in good standing business for at least 5 years. Our LLC was that proof. If the state listed it as non-compliant, an automated alert would go to his HR department. His entire qualification for his high-paying, powerful job would evaporate overnight. The pieces clicked into place with terrifying clarity. Just then, my phone buzzed. An email from Mark. The subject line was simple, urgent. Call me ASAP. I waited an hour before I called. He answered on the first ring, his voice uncharacteristically sweet. Hey, sis. Listen, I just need a tiny favor. There's some silly paperwork for that old business we had. I just need your signature to finalize it. It's nothing. I played dumb. What paperwork? I thought that company was gone. His tone tightened. It's just an administrative thing. Don't worry about it. I pressed gently. But I'd like to know what I'm signing. The sweetness vanished. Just sign the damn form I'm emailing you, he snapped. It's not like you matter in this. You never did any of the real work. The line went dead. The next day, my phone rang. It was my mom. Honey, what's going on? She asked, her voice laced with worry. Mark says you're being unreasonable and refusing to help him with some important work thing. He's really stressed. Why are you causing trouble? The emotional manipulation hit me like a punch. He had gotten to them first, painting me as the vindictive, troublesome sister. I tried to explain, but she just repeated, family helps family. Don't be difficult. When I hung up, I felt that old, familiar weight of being misunderstood. But this time, it was different. This time, I knew the truth. I whispered into the quiet of my apartment, I'm done. I needed legal advice, not for revenge, but for protection. I met with a lawyer, a calm woman named Abigail Ross. I showed her all the documents. She confirmed everything. You legally own 50% of this LLC, she said. No one can force you to sign anything. He hasn't broken any laws, but he's been creatively leveraging an asset you co-own. I took a deep breath. And if the business becomes non-compliant? She nodded. It would likely trigger an audit of any job dependent on its active status. He would have some explaining to do. 2 days later, Mark showed up at my apartment. He didn't knock, he pounded. I opened the door to find him red-faced and furious. What is your problem? He yelled, his voice echoing in the hall. Sign the papers. Do you want me to tell everyone what a selfish brat you are? I'll make sure you're cut out of the family for good. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there, looking at him. I just want to understand what I'm signing, Mark. You've never respected me enough to explain anything. He was so angry he didn't think. He just spat the words out, my job depends on that damn signature. Are you happy now? In that moment, everything changed. The power in the room shifted. He needed something from me, and for the first time, he couldn't just demand it. I wasn't being petty or cruel. I was simply asking for basic respect and transparency. He stood there, chest heaving, waiting for me to cave. But I didn't. I saw the panic in his eyes, the realization that his usual tactics weren't working. He was too proud to apologize, too arrogant to explain properly. I closed the door softly, leaving him standing in the hallway. I had decided. I would not sign anything until he told the whole family the truth. The ambush came on Sunday. My parents called, asking me to come over for a family talk. When I arrived, they were all there, Mom, Dad, my aunt, my uncle. They sat in a semicircle, and Mark stood off to the side, playing the victim. They took turns. He's your brother. He's worked so hard. Why are you trying to hurt him? I stayed calm. I didn't yell or cry. I just listened. Their words were meant to pressure and shame me, but my quiet poise seemed to unnerve them. Later, as I was getting a glass of water, my dad pulled me aside. He's always walked all over you, he whispered. Maybe this is your chance to finally stand up to him. Emboldened by my silence, Mark started yelling again in the living room. She's ruining my life. After everything I've done for her. I walked back in. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You're ungrateful. You've always been stupid and incompetent. You couldn't even run a simple business without me. The words hung in the air, the same insults he'd used since we were kids. But this time, he'd said them in front of everyone. The room went completely silent. My aunt's hand flew to her mouth. My mother stared at him, her face pale. They had finally heard him, the real him. I looked at each of their shocked faces, then back at my brother. My voice was clear and steady. You don't respect me. You never have. And you're asking for my help while treating me like garbage. I didn't wait for a response. I picked up my purse and walked out of the house, my head held high. For the first time, I wasn't running away in tears. I was walking away with my dignity. The next morning, my phone rang. It was an unknown number with a formal area code. I answered. Hello, this is Isabella from Hudson and Grant HR. I'm trying to reach a co-owner of Bright Future Innovations. My heart was in my throat. This is she, I said, my voice surprisingly even. The woman explained that they'd been trying to reach Mark about the LLC's compliance status for a mandatory audit. They needed the annual certification. I didn't lie. I didn't exaggerate. I simply stated the facts. There's currently a disagreement between the co-owners regarding the business, I said. The documents haven't been signed yet. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the clicking of a keyboard. Her tone became more formal, more serious. I see. Thank you for informing us. We'll note that in our file. The text started an hour later. First, they were furious. Asterisk, what did you tell them? You're dead to me. Asterisk, then, as the day wore on, they became desperate. Asterisk, please, they put me on temporary review. I can't access my projects. Asterisk, finally, that night, a long, rambling text came through. He admitted it. He had exaggerated his role in our old LLC on his application, making it sound like a successful venture he alone built. It was the only thing that met the 5-year entrepreneurial requirement for his promotion. His final text was 3 simple words, asterisk, please. I need you. Asterisk. To my surprise, my phone rang again. It was my Aunt Carol, who had been at the intervention. Honey, she said, her voice soft. I've been on the phone with your mother all morning. We're all talking, and we're seeing things differently. She told me the family was shocked by Mark's meltdown. They were finally questioning his version of events. My quiet strength had made an impact. My uncle had even admitted Mark had always been jealous of my creativity. I'm sorry we didn't see it before, she said. As we hung up, my phone beeped. A voicemail from Mark. I played it. It was just the sound of him struggling to breathe, then a quiet, broken whimper. He came over that evening. He looked like a different person. His coat was half-zipped, his hair was a mess, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He didn't try to push past me. He just stood there, defeated. HR is doing a deep audit, he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. They've suspended my clearance. I need your signature to reinstate compliance. If I don't, I'll lose everything. I let him in and offered him tea. We sat at my kitchen table. I looked at my older brother, who had always seemed so untouchable. I'll help you, Mark, I said quietly. But only if you take responsibility. He looked up, a flicker of his old defiance in his eyes. What does that mean? It means you tell the truth. To the family, to HR if they ask. You acknowledge that Bright Future Innovations was a 50-50 partnership. That I was an equal owner and contributor. I wasn't asking for a groveling performance. I was asking for a simple, factual statement to establish a boundary. To reclaim my dignity. He stared at his hands, his pride warring with his desperation. Finally, he shook his head. I can't do that. He stood up, his chair scraping the floor. "I'd rather lose my job," he shouted, and stormed out. He called my bluff, and he lost. A week later, I heard from a family friend that Mark's suspension had become formal. His company access card was deactivated. His name was removed from the leadership program website. Coworkers were gossiping, and his professional reputation was crumbling. His pride was costing him everything. The same day, I received a thick, official-looking letter. It was from the State Compliance Board, a formal inquiry about the status of Bright Future Innovations LLC, addressed to both owners. The clock was ticking louder than ever. I went back to see Abigail, my lawyer. I wasn't angry anymore, just resolved. "I don't want to play this game," I told her. "I don't want to use this as leverage forever. What's the cleanest way out?" She nodded understandingly. "You can file a voluntary dissolution. As a 50% owner, you have the right to initiate the process. It would legally end the LLC. It wasn't an act of revenge, it was an act of closure. It would force Mark to stand on his own actual merits." "Let's do it," I said. She slid a form toward me. Filing for dissolution requires formally notifying the other owner. I sent him the dissolution papers by certified mail. He showed up at my door that night, but the anger was gone. He just looked broken. His shoulders were slumped, and his eyes were hollow. "I got the papers," he whispered. He didn't come in. He just stood in the doorway, the cold night air swirling around him. "I was insecure," he said, his voice trembling. "You were always so creative, so sure of yourself. I felt like I had to be better, smarter. I belittled you so I could feel bigger. I'm sorry. I am so sorry." For the first time, it sounded real. "I'll do anything," he pleaded. "Just, please help me." I invited him inside. We sat at the same kitchen table. I had a new document ready, one I had typed myself. It wasn't a legal contract, but a personal agreement. My terms were simple. First, a written letter to me, acknowledging my equal work in our old business. Second, a public apology to the family for his behavior and his lies. Third, a genuine promise of future respect. No more belittling comments, no more taking credit for my ideas. He read it over slowly. I saw him hesitate, his ego fighting one last battle. Then, with a sigh that seemed to come from his very soul, he picked up a pen and signed his name. I signed the HR compliance documents the next day. He was reinstated, but with a 6-month probationary period and a formal note in his file. True to his word, he gathered the family and apologized. He didn't make excuses. He told them he had relied on my work for his career and had been unfair for years. He meant it. The dynamic in the room was different. They looked at me with a new respect, not as Mark's little sister, but as an equal. A few weeks later, the final confirmation arrived. The LLC was officially dissolved. It was over. The business that had been the invisible chain between us was gone. Mark had to rebuild his reputation at work based on his own actual performance, not a fabricated past. It was harder for him, but he did it. He calls me now to ask for advice, and he actually listens to my answers. He respects me not because I saved his job, but because I finally demanded the dignity I should have had all along. I didn't destroy him. I just stopped letting him use me. And that was enough. I walked into the sleek office building downtown, a smile on my face, ready for my first day as lead designer, a position I earned completely on my own.